Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be starting my guide series. So as always I'm going to be going quest by quest in 7.1 and I will go through each and every single path, explain the difficulties you might face, suggest the best options for the lanes and for the bosses, plus point out any of the kind of like trickier fights or trickier things to keep in mind. And yeah, I'm gonna be releasing 1 or 2 of these a day, basically throughout the entire week. So today we're starting with the 7.11. Right, so we're gonna start with this lane. Pleasure to Burn got a light and mighty charge. And here, quite honestly, you can pretty much use absolutely anything or anyone. The only thing you need to obviously work around is the Mighty Charge, so you do want to be aggressive, but this is Mighty Charge 1, and it doesn't make them go unstoppable. It just purifies the debuffs whenever they dash at you. Thanks to Got a Light, you have ability to inflict incinerates on the opponent regardless of what you're doing, and Pleasure to Burn obviously will prevent you from dealing any meaningful damage unless opponents are incinerated. So if you use champions who naturally have access to incinerate, you will kind of have easier time, but quite honestly this is just a suggestion. Bring in your strongest champions and you're gonna be fine. I believe I personally used Corvus for like majority or at least part of it, because you get a mutant charge early on, then it's a Avenger charge, you can get the auto block charge next, and for latter parts you already have Corvus with 3 charges. You can kind of do whatever you want. There is literally not a single difficult fight in there. I will leave the bosses till last, but now we're gonna move on to the next fight. Next lane. But yeah, that entire path is relatively easy. You generally can use any single champion. Now this can't stop, won't stop node again is largely mitigated by Muscle Wizard and Fight or Flight. And Kabams being extremely nice in this case as well, because they give you 2 different additional ways how you can bypass can't stop, won't stop. Because can't stop, won't stop overall is very, very nasty node. And you typically want to use champions who have access to Unstoppable, and that's a relatively rare ability. But using any Mystic champion right now here would give you an ability to gain Unstoppables or Fury buffs. And on top of all of that, you can technically use any champion because of Fight or Flight, and that is additional way how you can gain Unstoppable on completely random champions. Ideally, however, for this lane, you do want to use Mystic champions. Not just because they're gonna have great matchups here along the way as well, because Howard the Duck has a bunch of buffs, Hull Obsidian can gain a bunch of buffs, Dr. Octopus gains buffs, and then you have Venom the Duck and Colossus. So Mystics will have a very, very good time out here. But obviously because of that Muscle Wizard for Mystic attackers. Now, keep in mind that there will be some champion abilities that mess with this node, and I don't know if it's intended or not intended, but Tigra, for instance, could knock these guys down forever and never gained Unstoppable buff. But on the upside, Black Widow Clairvoyant or Dr. Doom or whoever will have a fantastic time here. You really shouldn't worry about it too much. Again, it's a really relatively open lane where you have tons of options. Primarily, you will want to use your Mystic champions. If not, you can just rely on your own champion Unstoppable abilities, so you can potentially cheese it with Thing. That could also be an option, or however you want to do it. But again, it's a relatively friendly, concept-friendly lane, and there isn't all that much to worry about. Right, let's move on to the next path, and this is Flare and Colorblind. Now, the MVPs on Flare lane are typically champions who can regenerate. Colorblind just is nothing. It just means that you will have to bring in champions from different classes, and that's about it. Now, great champions for Flare, and here even at a rank 4 level, would be, for instance, Rogue, because Rogue heals up of her level 1, and you gain 300% attack increase, and you're going to be healing a ton, and she's practically immortal. Alongside Rogue, Black Widow Clairvoyant will be able to top up her health extremely proficiently as well. Then you're gonna have a champion like Corvus, for instance, who significantly benefits. That is something that I personally used for this lane. I just brought in Corvus and smashed everything very quickly. Ghost obviously would work fantastic, especially with Hood synergy. And the beauty of Ghost Trinity is that all three of those champions are from different classes, so you have no problems bringing them in. But other than that, it's a flare node. So long as you are prepared to take some damage, you're not gonna have any trouble at all. And yeah, it's again a very simple, very straightforward path. Now we have this Masochism, Double Down, and Power Focus. Double Down is whenever a skill attacker fails to apply a debuff to defender due to an immunity, they gain a precision buff increasing critical rating by blah 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 blah. For this lane, the easiest way to deal with it is just bring in Ghost. Quite honestly, there is not a single opponent Ghost wouldn't be great for. You don't have to worry about Masochism whilst using Ghost because you never kind of have to parry, and that was by far the most effective way how to do stuff. Now, if you do want to benefit from node, obviously you can bring in your regular skill suspects. We can see that every single champion on this lane is bleed immune, so you're not going to be placing bleed debuffs on the opponent, but you're going to be gaining these precision buffs, which overall is kind of like all the same. I don't think that sacrificing all your bleed damage is gonna make this lane all that much quicker, and I don't think this was the most successful and interesting application of these nodes. So basically it's just Masochism, and if you have made it to Act 7, I trust that you guys are able to deal with Masochism node. If you do need any extra additional help with it, two of the best champions to counter it would be Storm Pyramid X, because if they will shrug off your Masochism, well, if they will shrug off your parry stun via Masochism, you will place a passive stun instead, and Apocalypse, who cannot get shrugged off, and that is about as simple. But I don't think this is the best design lane. I don't think it's particularly hard, but it's also not particularly kind of like one of those where you absolutely love the node design, because it's a bit of a fail. Overall, there shouldn't be too much problem dealing with like Luke Cage, Vision, Nebula, Ghost Rider. Remember, he's Incinerate immune now. Only one that could provide you with some problems would be this Ultron who evades. That's about it. And let's move on swiftly to the next one. Now we have Oscillate, Invade, and Kinetic Instigator. And this one is definition for a Corvus path. It's so easy. A piece of advice here, however, if you are using Corvus, or basically any champion, if you do plan on benefiting from Invade, is start the fight aggressive. Do take that initial parry damage. And whilst the Fury phase on Oscillate is active, don't even try to hit their block. That is how you get backed up in corner, that is how you mess up, and that is how you die. The whole beauty of this entire design was that you survive the first phase, you kind of like parry them, you hit them a couple of times, and you dash back, intercept them, but you don't overdo it with attacking them. And then when the shield phase starts, is when you start hitting their block. And the best thing about it was, for instance, with Corvus, because obviously you don't want to do level 2, because level 2 is unblockable, and you're not going to gain that entire invade bonus. But what you want to do is you want to drop a combo in their block and launch a level 1. And thanks to Kinetic Instigator, you gain power striking their block, and your level 1 also gives you power. So quite frequently it was that where I just hit their block, dropped my level 1, and I was basically up already for another level 1. Since it's Oscillate, they kind of turtle in their corner, and I was able to do the same thing again and again, and they were dead. So this is a wonderful node combination, but again, the cheeky trick here is ignore the invade until Oscillate's Fury expires, and they go defensive. Other than that, again, it's a perfect path for Corvus, because you get 2 missions from the Iron Man fight, and then there's a mutant not too long after, and yeah, not too much to worry about overall. If you do not have Corvus, you can use Aegon, but I think it's going to be a bit trickier, especially with the ramp-up process. But for most part, the key bit here is that you can gain power striking opponent's block, And I think that should also work extremely well with Massacre, because Massacre gains power himself whilst if opponents incinerated whilst they're striking the opponent's block, or if you had Flame Ignited. And Massacre's level 2 also deals extra damage in the block. So I do believe that if you do not have Corvus or Aegon, then Massacre would be a very wonderful option for these fights as well. I actually want to check that out and possibly record a video for it. And now we have Turtling, Chitonius Thorns, Cosmic Fracture. Cosmic attackers, light attacks have 50% chance to armor break and reduce their armor rating. Cutting wires. So do not use robot champions for this lane. Cosmic champions gain that extra armor break. And only thing that you kind of have to worry about here is that Chitonius Thorns, where you're gonna get bled if opponents have armor buffs. So just bring in a bleed me. That's about it. It doesn't have to be Cosmic. The lane isn't overly difficult. But obviously here, one of the better options probably would be Cosmic Ghost Rider. But other than that, it's quite literally just bring in Bleed Immune and you will be perfectly fine. Absolutely nothing to worry about. If you do have that Cosmic Ghost Rider, wonderful. But overall, there aren't too many Cosmic Bleed Immune champions. You can bring in also Cosmic non-Bleed Immunes, but then there's still that chance you're going to get that Bleed debuff. So you do need to worry about that. My personal recommendation would be just bring in a full team of Bleed Immune champions, and if you do not get to benefit from that Cosmic node, that's perfectly fine. So you have Mysterio to deal with, and Darkhawk. And there are some annoying opponents, definitely not the easiest lane. I believe I used myself Cosmic Ghost Rider for most of this, and I can't seem to recall who I used for, if it was just Cosmic Ghost Rider or it was something else. But again, yeah, Cosmics don't have too many Bleed Immune champions, I think. So yeah, just pump in your team with Bleed Immunes. So we're gonna start with the bosses, and this one is arguably the most tricky boss, but that bullet time is actually very, very cool thing. So anytime the defender is stunned, they immediately remove the stun and gain evade charge, which grants 100% chance to evade. Each time a hit is evaded, one evade charge is removed. If the attacker avoids a basic attack using Dexterity Mastery, all evade charges are removed, and the defender is passively stunned for 1.5 seconds per charge, which is kind of the key thing here. And then you also have Stun Vulnerability and Tenacity. Tenacity will make it hard for your debuffs to stick, but it doesn't really matter for most fights, because your parry stuns won't stick anyways. What you want to do is you want to parry her as many times as you can before you get cornered, and then at that point evade one of her hits. She's gonna get stunned, and then just go ham at her because you're gonna be dealing 200% damage. That is if you want to deal with her using that node, and if you use that method, you can quite literally use any single champion and you can do some damage. Obviously, by far the easiest way, in my opinion, to deal with this Black Widow is bring in an absolute evade counter. For instance, you can bring in Nick Fury, or you can bring in whoever else you want that completely shuts down the evade, and then just ignore the bullet time, ignore the stun vulnerability, and just go ham at her, because besides constantly being able to evade and being able to gain that evade charge after level 1, she doesn't really have anything going on for her. This fight will initially seem chaotic. She KO'd me a couple of times. First time I soloed her with Nick, then she KO'd me a couple of times. Then I read that bullet time node properly, and with that it was also quite easy. So she might seem like a tricky boss, but she really isn't all that bad. Now we have Yondu, and Yondu, I think that Super Masochism currently is broken. But operating under the impression that it will get fixed or it is working properly, you just don't want to debuff the guy. That's about as simple as that. Feats of Power is not a major threat to deal with. Rich get richer, in this case, again, isn't a big deal. If anything, it's helping you because he doesn't generically has any buffs. But you have the Foresight here, which lets you gain 200% attack on intercepts. So it's perfect for Ghost, for instance, because Ghost intercepts wire phasing and it's a guaranteed very easy intercept. Or I just used Corvus and one-shot the guy both times as well. It's dead easy. You get 200% attack increase for a vast majority of the fight if you feel comfortable intercepting, and you're good to go. If you don't, and if you have trouble working on masochism, just like I said before, you can use Apocalypse or Storm Pyramid X, and you will basically ignore the masochism node and you should be good. Right, who else we have as the final boss on Black Widow Clairvoyant? She has Footloose, she has Coolant Leak, which basically prohibits you from bringing in robots, and Juke is helpful node. It's from AQ map 7, where if you alternate your combo finishers, you gain small fury buff, but it's not really the biggest deal. Prey on the Weak is gonna let her gain more power, unblockable, special attacks, not a big deal. Now, Footloose is the only problem that you will have to deal with here. So ideally, you do want to bring in an unstoppable counter, or basically a science slow champion. It's pretty much perfect for what you want to do here. So you can bring in like a Red Hulk, She-Hulk, Spider-Gwen, Sorcerer Supreme, or whoever. The debuff that she places on you don't deal much damage. And only thing again to remember is that her special attacks are unblockable. But besides from that, it's actually quite easy fight to deal with. There's not too much of a problem here. I generally think I actually used Human Torch as well, because you can play around the Footloose well enough, and it's a mystic character, and it was simple enough. But you can definitely just bring in any slow champion, and you can be just fine, or even like Captain America Infinity War. So yeah, first quest, super easy. As I said, the only tricky lane here is probably the one where you have Mysterio, Stealth with Spider-Man, Sentinel, Emma Frost, Darkhawk. All of those are relatively difficult defenders, but compared to what most of you have gone through in Act 6, it really isn't all that much. And if you can benefit from Cosmic Fracture, that's great, but if you can't, it's not a big deal. And if you have a bleed immune champion and nothing else, then there's basically no other nodes that you need to worry about. They're gonna get some armor buffs, whatever. If you have Cosmic champion, you can armor break extra and get some more damage, but just don't bring in robots, bring in any other bleed immunes. And that is pretty much it. So that is 7.11. Tomorrow I will be uploading 7.12 up until we're done with the entire quest. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys find it helpful. And I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya.